August of 2019. Some friends of mine in high school and I were looking for a new game to play, and Overwatch was having a free weekend where anyone could play for a few days as a sort of trial to bring in new players. I'd heard of Overwatch before, but until that point I was pretty unfamiliar with the competitive shooter scene, only having played a handful of FPS games fairly casually. Overwatch was great, and after our weekend-long trial of the game ended, none of us were ready to say goodbye to one of the best gaming experiences we'd ever had. Anyway, I was so excited to play more of this game. We would play for hours straight, staying up until the early hours of the morning and having a blast, but as things got more competitive, new layers of this game would reveal themselves to us. The GOATS meta was the main issue for that time of the game. Seeing as I had primarily become a hitscan DPS player who occasionally flexed onto Ana, Zen, or Zarya, the fact that damage heroes were just inferior to a full support and tank composition was not great. But I'm not gonna lie to you, at that point in time, meta only really affected about 5% of my games, and the teams that were running it were not running it well. Blizzard was having immense difficulty, shall we say, balancing the game around GOATs, and specifically Brig, so they implemented 2-2-2 role lock. This meant every team would have 2 DPS every game. But at the same time they added Sigma, a shield hero who could deal damage and block damage at the same time, after adding Orisa, a shield hero who could deal damage and block damage at the same time, both completely outclassing the original shield tank, Reinhardt. So shields never broke, nothing ever died, and almost no player skill was required to win games. Instead, the games were won and lost based on the heroes the players chose, not the players themselves. Sound familiar? Most of my longtime Overwatch bros started leaving the game, one by one. Anyway, to solve this issue, Blizzard moved into Overwatch 2, where only one tank is required in each team. A resurgence of players came to play either for the first time or as returning players, aided by the fact that the game went free to play. And now, years later, nobody is happy with the balance of the game. DPS feels unimpactful for the amount of effort they have to put in. Supports are bottlenecked into picking the few heroes that work with their tank because the tank is the most impactful role in the game, and it's miserable to play. So we've taken 3 big steps to get to where we are now. 3 big fumbles that led us to this point. GOATs, double shield, and now giga tanks. And I understand that the balance team that we have now is not the same balance team that we had at the beginning, but the point stands that still things aren't getting better. We take 1 step forward, we take another 3 back. The team can't decide if this game should be a MOBA or a shooter and seem to mash random elements of both together and hope for the best. Okay, I am exaggerating, but things could definitely be better, should be better. But I'm not the type of guy to say, balance sucks, I could balance better than this, and not actually have the backbone to do it. So I did it. I sat down for multiple painstaking hours to make a fake theoretical balance patch to mold the game into my image, my vision, where skill and value scale linearly, where aim, movement, resource management, and awareness above all win games. The document I've made will be linked in the description. Let's get into it. Man, this is gonna be a long one. Okay, so first things first, the disclaimer. The changes in this fan-made balance patch are purely of my own opinion. While other individuals were consulted, ultimately every adjustment reflects changes I believe would be healthy for the game. Despite not playing every hero, I've tried to keep the changes as unbiased as possible with the identity of the hero close to the original vision in a way that feels fair to play and play against. The general goal with my changes was to reward individual player skill, both game sense and mechanics, and team play. Very, very true, of course. Every hero should have a chance to win every engagement, and every hero should be punishable for their mistakes to a reasonable degree. I'm not a professional hero designer, nor do I have experience with game design. I'm just someone who is passionate about Overwatch and competitive play, and has been for the past 6 years. I spent 5 years on console, spent the last almost a year on PC. I'm calling it a year because it makes it easier. Okay, this little part is just contextual, so while looking at the changes, I would like to remind you that any given hero's balance is relative to the state of the heroes surrounding them. For instance, in these notes, I have decreased May's secondary fire damage, making her less potent against other mid-range poke heroes. However, by reducing the total health pools of many flanking heroes, she is actually able to one-shot kill Tracer with a well-placed critical hit, like she used to be able to. With role passives, abilities, and even ultimates reworked, some mechanics and ability interactions need to be adjusted in context of those changes. While this completely theoretical balance patch is by no means perfect, my hope is that the overall balance of the game with these changes is a step in the right direction towards a fair and enjoyable gameplay experience. Okay, this whole paragraph is about Overwatch Workshop. If you're here reading this document that is linked in the description, you can read through all of that, blah blah blah. Okay, on to the actual game changes. So, quick melee damage decreased from 40 to 30. This is purely because I think the value of a quick melee doesn't change even if you buff health pools. There's no reason why it should. It's a quick melee. It's not like you're supposed to use it to deal a significant amount of damage. It's for the times where you want to deal get that extra instance of damage in, either as you or after reloading or before reloading. Sometimes it depends. I don't feel like this ever needed to change to 40, so keeping it at 30 just feels more sensible. Okay, 6v6 roll lock. Here's the juicy part. Here's the part that some people are going to be like, I hate you, and some people are going to be like, he's based. I understand that the part of the selling point of the 2 in Overwatch 2's title was the format change from 6v6 to 5v5 multiplayer with 1 tank, 2 damage, and 2 supports. However, with only 1 tank on the team, there's too much potential for counterpicking. The various tank combinations are able to cover some of each other's weaknesses without homogenizing the tank role into heroes that all play too similarly. I believe every tank should have an identity that has not been shoehorned into being a jack of all trades. I mean, think about Wrecking Ball's design. A hero like Wrecking Ball could never be designed in the current design space. He just doesn't work as a single tank. It just doesn't make sense unless he's super OP. He was always, I mean, as a tank, he was never the most, let's say, team play oriented, but at least he could make space while another tank was off doing something, or he could dive with his other tank. But solo tanking, he just doesn't offer enough. His team is just too vulnerable for you to actually play him when you have all these other giga tanks. That's just my take. Again, everything is just my take. So take it with a grain of salt. You can agree, you can disagree. Just do it respectfully. Armor. Armor is a very important factor when it comes to how survivable a hero is without any input. For some heroes, this is entirely necessary, but the various interactions and value of armor depending on the incoming damage is too wide of a spectrum. I propose narrowing the value of armor to affect various damage sources. Okay, so reducing armor by 15 points of damage or 30%, whichever is less per instance. This basically, to sum it up, is the armor affects big bursts of damage a little bit more, but not a significant amount, and it affects low instances of damage a little bit less. That's your Tracers, your Soldiers, your Reapers. I don't feel like it makes a lot of sense for armor to be very strong globally, because healing just becomes insane. And it also doesn't make sense to kind of have half DPS extremely limited in their capabilities by armor, and the other half of DPS really good, because it kind of just skews which DPS are good, and you can't really balance properly around it. So yeah, this way it kind of brings the values a little bit closer together. Still impactful. The big 30% is nothing to scoff at, and that combined with other damage mitigation sources and damage reduction sources is still pretty impactful. So yeah, that's kind of the idea of that change. Damage reduction is kept at 75%. Now, currently in the game, I have no clue. I think it might be supposed to be kept at 75%, but this rule breaks anytime there's an ability that surpasses 75% damage reduction on its own, and can cause all sorts of issues with armor and stuff. So this change should allow for less situations where it takes a whole team to eliminate one hero with multiple instances of damage reduction stacked onto them. During damage reduction abilities that are 30% or more, armor is treated as regular health so as not to reduce incoming damage multiplicatively. Okay? So no more Ramatra situation, no more Brig during an ult situation. Heroes should be able to do damage to other heroes if they're landing their shots, no matter how many abilities you stack onto them. It just starts becoming ridiculous. And it means that you have to either individually nerf every instance of damage reduction way too much for it to have an impact on its own, or damage reduction is crazy when stacked. So there you go. Healing amplification. This doesn't really come into play too much in the game, but it with Hogs Take a Breather, I believe it still has the healing amplification when he's finished healing, and it does combo with Ana's Nade. That's the only situation. But abilities that increase healing received on targets no longer compound, but rather only the highest value takes effect. For example, if a hero would receive healing amplification from two different sources, one of 25% and one of 50%, only the 50% amplification is taken into account. That makes sense to me. Hopefully it does to you. It basically just means that you can't stack healing amp on something for the same reason you can't stack damage reduction on something too much, because things just don't die, and that's not fun. Movement speed, maximum movement speed now kept at 150. Currently it's 175. Yeah, that just gets a little silly. Abilities that by themselves grant more than 150 are excluded from this calculation, e.g. Diva Boosters, Genji Dragonblade, Lucio Woolride, Soldier Sprint, etc. That is a rule that is currently in the game. Doomfist can punch with his empowered punch at 1100% of his normal speed, or with an additional 1100, so it's 1200% of normal movement speed. Sounds crazy, but when you see a Doomfist punch, yeah, it makes sense. I don't know what to tell you. Maximum slow is kept at 50%. I don't know if anybody else has ever experienced getting flashbanged and ravenous vortexed at the same time, but you basically stop moving for about a second and you die every time. It also means, I mean, these changes in general mean that stacking abilities is much less valuable, and it's better to coordinate the use of the abilities in one after the other. Ultimate charge or retention on hero swap. Yeah, let's not do that, guys. Let's not give people more incentive to counter swap. It's boring. You can counter swap, but there should at least be some risk. If you're playing into a counter, or you want to be playing a more advantageous hero into the enemy team, there should be some risk associated with it, like losing ult charge. That makes sense to me. It was never a problem in Overwatch 1 and should have never been a thing. It's crazy they haven't removed it already. Respawns, wave respawn, wave duration decreased from 6 seconds to 4 seconds. That's right, I thought of everything. So currently the wave respawn kind of piggyback system means that you can get a kill pretty late. You can stagger a kill pretty late and it will still respawn with their team. They will not be punished for getting staggered. You will not be rewarded for chasing the late kills. It's lame, and it results in a lot of situations where something dies and then it gets back into the fight within like the next 12 to 15 seconds, and I just think that that's bad design. So reducing it, not removing it, but reducing it means that there's still a benefit for players who, ranks where people stagger a lot to some degree, but intentionally staggering people is more of a viable tactic, as it should be. Visual and audio indicators There are both visual and audio indicators for when you are revealed by an enemy as all heroes. So kind of like the thing Sombra has, basically, where it tells us she's revealed when she's revealed. Every hero has that. Mostly because functionality with the new role passives that I've designed means that getting revealed is it's going to happen much more often. So knowing that you're revealed just makes sense. And I'm always a big fan of not hiding information from players, giving them as much information as possible. So letting people know, hey, they can see you through the wall right now. It's just another one of those things that I feel like should have been in the game for a long time. Role passives. This is where the juiciest stuff comes in. I'm going to scroll down a little bit just to show you how much this shit's changed. This stuff's changed. Okay. So, I think role passives as an idea are great, but they have too much potential in their current form on some heroes. Having a main role passive that each hero has, as well as 3 or 4 sub-role passives for each hero that heroes can have 2 of for each role, that heroes can have 2 of, would be impactful in securing heroes in their class in a way that is tailored more to the heroes themselves while not adding any unintended interactions with some of the cast. Now, with the role passives, especially the DPS passives that they've introduced in the past, they had the reload one, which is just ineffective on Hanzo. They had the movement speed one, which is just stupid on Widow. They had the global passive now, healing reduction, which works, but it's stronger on some heroes than other heroes. So having extra kind of knobs or dials to tune for heroes, and different kind of categories to assign heroes kind of helps complement their playstyle without leaving anybody in the dust. Sorry, Hanzo players. The global passive obviously is similar in function to the passive all heroes have now. It's just kind of tuned a little bit differently. Each hero regenerates 10% of max health per second after 5 seconds of not taking damage. Basically, it's what we have now, except it's a little more tuned to the hero's health pool in general, rather than just being a random number that helps Tracer a lot more than it helps a hero like, Cassidy. Scaling it to the hero's health makes sense. Tank passives. I'm not going to read through all of these, all of the affected heroes and whatnot, but I will go through the main passives, the different sub passives. So the main passive. The duration of disabling status effects such as sleep, stuns, etc. are reduced by 20%. That is for all tanks. It is 20% reduction on the amount of time you are stunned. This is because one of the most frustrating things that I see tank players complaining about, and for good reason, is constantly getting stunned. And they haven't actually ever done anything to reduce it. They love reducing knockback, but knockback is much less frustrating than losing control of your player's entire everything. Movement, damage output, ability usage, all of it. It sucks. So now when you're stunned 20% less. You can still get stunned, don't get me wrong. Sub-passive number 1 for tanks. Juggernaut. Dealing damage to this hero grants 10% less ult charge. This is already in the game, but it's for all tanks. And it's kind of silly that it's for all tanks, because why? When I'm shooting a Reinhardt that's swinging into me, I should be getting juicy ult charge, because he should not be able to swing into me for free, effectively. It removes some punishment for tanks. Tanks like Doomfist, Junker Queen, Malga, the tanks that aren't blocking very much damage all the time. But not all tanks have it. Specifically, there are specific tanks that just should not have it. Okay, Unyielding. Gain 10% damage reduction when at 30% maximum health or below. This basically helps tanks to get healed when they're critical HP, or it helps them to get out of dangerous positions, because these heroes typically play more dangerous positions, or are super low mobility. Again, 10% damage reduction, it's not nothing, but it's not a huge amount. These are sort of little things, Okay, Stalwart. 30% knockback resistance. This is already in the game. In fact, they tuned it down from 40 to 25, which is a massive jump, but I put mine at 30 before they did that. So there you go. Now 30% is only 5%
more than it is now. So 30% is getting booped is going to be a little less noticeable than it is on live right now, but still decent. Onto the damage passive. So their main passive remains the same, 20% less healing for 2 seconds. The sub passive, number one, and this one, it sounds stronger than it is, or it sounds. People will overreact to hearing this. Okay, I'll just read it. Slayer, final blows restore 20% of the maximum health over 1 second. This value is not decreased by the damage main passive. So effectively, if your hero has 250 health and they get a final blow, they will be healed over the next 1 second, 50 health. 50 health isn't an insane amount of health to be healed just for getting a kill. But for the heroes that have it, I wanted these heroes to be heroes that take risks in their ability to get kills. So every hero here has to take some sort of risk to actually get the kill. And I've retuned the heroes as well, obviously, but that's kind of the way that I thought about it. I didn't want a hero that sits back and gets the benefits of this passive. Ranged basically counteracts damage fall off for heroes that need it. Basically every hit scan that isn't like Tracer and Reaper has this. Yes, hitting shots from far away is hard. They shouldn't be penalized for doing it heavily anyway. Strategist reveals enemies for 0.5 seconds after breaking line of sight. Now guys, I played Marvel Rivals and that was a great time. And Punisher has this. I think Punishers last for 1 second. And it's very helpful. Gives you like a little bit of micro information. Helps you decide kind of whether to continue taking a fight, whether to peek an angle, whether to hold an angle for longer, or whether to just look away and put your value in elsewhere. This will be more effective on some people, specifically heroes with high burst damage, but with that said, it's 0.5 seconds. It's not 1 second. So basically, hiding behind cover and not insta peeking, ego peeking again, you'll be fine. Focused reveals all enemy health bars when within an 8-meter radius. This is good for heroes who have either a high rate of fire, who can deal that extra 10 points, 20 points of damage pretty easily, or for heroes who are specifically breakpoint heroes that play sort of like or can play closer range. I gave it to Hanzo as well because A, no other passive really suited him, but B, can help him when he's getting pushed by flankers to decide whether or not he needs to use his abilities to deal the extra damage or not. Hanzo's is an interesting case because I gave him a full Storm Arrow rework and I'm pretty happy with it. I mean, again, I don't play every hero, but for the people who do play those heroes, I'd like to hear your opinions. And I've kind of hopefully balanced it in a way that people are happy with. Rewards skill and removes skillless abilities, shall we say. Okay, the support passives. Alright, the main passive is similar to the one we have now, except it still starts after 5 seconds. You just heal that 5% more than other heroes, so you will reach max HP faster. Okay, the sub-passive here, evasive, gain a 10% movement speed buff while at full health for more than 3 seconds. Immediately people will think Lucio's busted, Juno's busted, Kiriko's busted. Don't worry, I thought about it. Their abilities have kind of been tuned accordingly. But it's only while at full HP, and you have to be full HP for that 3 seconds. So this means that they're faster at getting back to the fight from spawn, and they're more, evasive. They're more difficult to hit for heroes that do burst damage like a Widow or like a Hanzo. You'll notice that the majority of these heroes also have low health. Depending on how I've changed it, you'll see. On to the next one, regenerative. The support main passive begins after 3 seconds instead of 5 seconds. This is more similar to how it is on live, but it's strong on live, so there you go. The protector passive is an interesting one. Your healing is 10% more effective on tanks. I mentioned it here, but that's kind of to offset the damage roll passive on tanks. This is specifically put on heroes that want to be healing tanks. If you can notice here, that's them. Or heroes whose healing output is kind of set, like Lifeweaver and Kiriko and Zen. yeah, those are the changes to the passives. Might seem confusing at first, but I feel like once you kind of get to learn it, it'll make more sense. Kind of splits heroes up into different reasons why you might pick them, and less again homogenizes a role. This is reflected in the balance changes as well, not just the role changes. Okay, moving on to the first tank changes. The tank diva. So I'll read over the kind of the general tank thing. Generally speaking, the tank role currently deals far too much damage, rivaling and often surpassing even the highest output damage heroes. As is traditional in other renditions of the tank role in games, the tank should be good at holding space and staying alive above all else, having the health and sustain cooldown mitigation abilities of another tank on the field, while also globally decreasing their total damage output, puts them more definitively in that position without removing too many of their big playmaking moments. Again, 6v6, 2 tanks, so they need less health, they need less damage mitigation because they have that other tank to fall back on, but more importantly, they need way less damage in most cases. There's no reason these tanks should be able to output the same amount of damage as a damage hero unless their tank has less tanking capabilities. Um, like Roadhog, but Roadhog has been partially addressed. Anyway, Diva. Pilot health back to 150. She's a skinny little girl. She should get punished for being a skinny little girl when she's not in a big, strong mech, okay? Big, strong mech mode, fine. Have your health. Have your 600 HP. Pilot form, she has no passives. But second of all, her damage. Her fusion cannons have been damage has been decreased. Her boosted knockback damage has been decreased, and her knockback has been reduced slightly. Her micro missile damage has been decreased, specifically the splash damage, and the radius is smaller. I'm making a lot of projectile radiuses smaller because generally the health is getting smaller again, and generally things like explosives never needed to be buffed again or to be projectile buffed in the first place because they weren't really missing. And the interesting thing about the tank buffs is that the amount of bullets that tanks take now is almost the exact same as it used to be before the projectile buffs, because you were always able to hit center of mass. And buffing a projectile size doesn't change that. It really only changes the edge cases, literally the edge cases of when you are hitting the edge of the hitbox, which happens more on smaller heroes and basically never on tanks. They didn't think that through, in my opinion. Doomfist, he's had the smallest health decrease, but he's also had his power block kind of damage decreased as well. The mitigation goes down. We'll go through this in order. His hand cannon damage has been reduced by about 20%. I don't want to nerf the damage of the rocket punch because that's not egregious at all. I don't think. I think what's annoying is the stuns. So reducing these micro stuns is the first step, and reducing his knockback. And Rocket Punch now only stuns the target directly impacted with the ability. No more does he have his punch cone where he can stun a whole team because the Reinhardt decided to step forward and get punched, you know. Power block, he moves faster in power block because I am an advocate for not making heroes move super slowly, especially movement-based heroes. So let him move, let him sidestep. This also increases his playmaking when it comes to dodging things like sleep. And if it turns out that he ends up needing a damage boost or a damage buff, I should say, that's in the cards. Again, none of this is play tested. This is all theory craft. Junker Queen. Listen, she can't anti-heal anymore. Her anti-heal is instead 75% healing reduction. So anti-heal is kind of lame for supports to play around. It makes cleanse much more of a necessary ability, and I don't think that that's good. I think having healing reduction is fine because there's always still the decision you can make. I'm just going to heal this person. 75% is a lot. Maybe that gets tuned down to 50, but the damage has been decreased. So more importantly, your speed boost has been decreased and the area of effect has been increased. So you can help your teammates out still, but you're less of a mini Lucio. Generally, it's damage nerfs. We shouldn't have tanks doing too much damage. Okay. Malga is an interesting case because he's so annoying to play against as a tank. So basically, a reduced damage. His self-healing has been decreased. His ally healing has been decreased, and his and ally damage reduction is now equal. One went up, one went down. Cage fight is where it gets interesting, though. I know that I'm nerfing Malga, but that's kind of what you have to do, especially when. Can you imagine a Malga getting like a shield, like a Reinhardt or a Sigma? That's not a world we live in right now, so he's hard countered by like Ana, but in 6v6 no longer, right? Which is also why he's more capable of helping his teammates a little bit with the ally damage reduction. So cage fight, the shield health is increased, okay, from 1500 to 2000. But when the shield's health drops below 50%, the chains will be destroyed. So no longer are people locked in, it's more just a shield. So you have to do 1000 damage to break the chains, another 1000 damage to break the shield. This means that the shield stays up for longer, but it doesn't stun for longer. It doesn't keep people rooted for longer. Helps his tanking ability a little bit, but reduces his CC, which is a goal. Remember when Overwatch 2 said they were going to reduce CC? That didn't happen. Alright, Orisa. Less health. No more overheat mechanic, because I don't think I've ever seen an Orisa's gun overheat. I don't think I've seen it. I think you just spam your abilities and you don't have to think about ever letting go of mouse one. So there you go. The damage does less, the ammo is less, there's no overheat mechanic, and your reload is now a set amount of time, 2.4 seconds. Energy javelin. You can hit things with energy javelin. It's way smaller because having 0.5 meter in radius is 1 meter in diameter. Throwing a meter wide javelin is too free to hit. It should be a skill shot, which is why the impact damage has gone up. The wall collision damage has gone down, so it's more just about hitting them, and it's not very super reliant on the person playing around a wall. The stun duration has been mildly decreased. So fortify. The cooldown is decreased slightly. No longer grants overhealth. The duration is increased, so its uptime is higher. Damage reduction is increased to 50%, so it reduces more damage, but it doesn't block headshot immunity. It no longer has headshot immunity, meaning that you can still express your skill against a fortified Orisa as an enemy DPS or a support or tank. There is headshot reduction to kind of offset that, but it's still worth doing. And the movement speed penalty has been removed, so you can move at normal speed while fortified. This is more supposed to make Orisa just better in every way for about a third of her gameplay, but less strong due to its higher uptime. Javelin spin does less damage significantly, and it gives you less movement speed and knockback. It's basically a defense matrix, so it doesn't need to do all this extra stuff. Terror Surge is slightly smaller and slows you for less, but its damage is significantly increased by the amount of time that you need to charge it. So keep that in mind. That's a 25% increase in how quickly it does its damage. Ramatra's always been kind of shoved into. He was kind of teased to us as a poke hero, but his poking form is so weak. He's basically just a brawl tank, and you only use him for brawl. So I'm kind of trying to lean away from that and lean into the more skilled element of his Omnic form. So his Omnic form health has been decreased because everyone's has. But the Void Accelerated damage has been slightly increased, and the projectile speed has been increased as well. So it's more reliable to use this as a source of damage rather than just do it while you can't use your pummel. Void Barrier, cooldown decreased, duration decreased. So this gives it a slightly higher uptime, but it means that he has to be more thoughtful in his placement of, using it. And when he chooses to use it, it has to time it a little bit better. So its uptime is a little higher. Its skill ceiling is a little higher and skill floor. Nemesis form, he gets Nemesis form way less. Duration's less, the cooldown's less. That's because this is better. The damage is reduced a little bit in Pummel, and its max range is decreased, and it's harder to hit. It's not bigger than a meter. A little ridiculous. Damage reduction decreased because 75 is nuts, and we've all seen what happens when it's at 75%. And the Ravenous Vortex he can use more often. It slows a little less. Its area is a little higher, so it's more valid to use on heroes that are up high. And its damage per second has been decreased, so it's more used to slow things, to make his shots easier, to make his pummel easier. He can use it a little more often, slows a little less. That's him. So Reinhardt, the OG. Reinhardt's health is back to 600. I think that's still more than it was in Overwatch 1. I might be wrong. He gets these two passives. His damage has been decreased from 100 to 75 because he's swinging a hammer. The fact that it ever needed to be 100 for him to compete with other tanks is just depressing for the state of the game. But 75 is a healthy amount. Reinhardt's the only hero that has to sacrifice anything for swinging, or at least he used to. Now he just tanks a lot of damage, so because of armor and healing and all that. Barrier field, his movement speed penalty has been increased, so he moves slower again. This will make shield hopping more important, by the way. That's been removed from the game. Remember shield hopping, guys? Yeah. His charge, the cooldown has been increased. The wall pin damage has been increased, so when he hits it, he's basically guaranteed to kill any squishy anything that he hits that isn't a tank. Stun on wall hit duration increased because again he has to risk a lot to get this pin, so increasing the stun is fine. Can no longer be cancelled. Adds skill to the ability. That's all I have to say about that. Earth Shatter shockwave range decreased back to what it used to be, and the knockdown duration has been decreased as well. This is enough for him to get the value that he used to get. With 2 tanks, 6 players on the field, getting knocked down for 2.8 seconds is a death sentence for any squishy that doesn't have a tank standing in front of them, and the tank passive will reduce this to, I think, 2.4, I think, the general passive, so your tanks will stand up first, but 2.4 seconds is plenty of time for 6 people to kill 2 things. Roadhog. He had a one-shot combo. It's ridiculous. They pretended to take it out of the game. They gave him Pigpen, which allows him to continue to do it. They lie to us. Health. He has less health. My guy has less health. He has these passives. Scrap gun damage has been decreased. The full off range has been decreased, so he has to be closer. Take a breather. You can now target one teammate who will also receive the benefits of Take a Breather. Now I've seen this rework done. I don't exactly remember what numbers and values they did. In terms of the actual scaling and damage numbers, I'm not sure what they did. This is mine. 18 meter targeting radius, resource meter removed, cooldown set to 6 seconds, so you can do this every 6 seconds. The way I'm thinking of it is like a Zarya bubble, right? So the duration is 1.2 seconds, total healing is 180, and the damage reduction is 50%. Slapping this on a Reinhardt, healing him for 180 and giving him 50% damage reduction for 1.2 seconds lets him get a couple of swings in there where he just probably will not die, which I think is fair considering that that's his only tanking ability. Chain hook. This is something that I have considered that I have thought for many years, all the time. It has a wind up now. After winding up, you press the ability and you throw out a hook. The hook will travel further the more you wind it up. When fully wound up, the hook will be thrown automatically. So cast time is 0.9 seconds till that initial time that you can throw the hook to 1.8 seconds is the maximum charge time. The sound effect, he needs to have a wind up sound effect as well as a throwing the hook sound effect. The maximum range went from 20 meters to 18 to 24, again depending on how long he charges it up. The projectile speed is a little faster just to help him get that 24 meters a little bit faster. Damage has been increased and the projectile radius has been decreased. The damage is increased to offset the damage decrease of Pigpen and his scrap gun. where now hitting a hook, it's harder to do, it's risky to do, but there's counterplay to it. You can't just get hit by the hook. You hear the hook, and if you're out of position, you're cooked. And if you're not out of position, you can move. Pigpen initial damage has been decreased, damage per second has been decreased, the total damage is less. Trigger radius is less as well. The slow radius has been increased, so he can slow many more people with it, but the slow has been decreased. Whole hog, no longer use chain hook or pigpen while using whole hog. You can still use your heal though, because this is no longer just a self heal, it is a heal my allied tank as well, and I think promoting him using that is perfectly fine. Sigma, the hero that killed Overwatch 1 in my opinion. He has less shields, his total hit points is 500. His hyperspheres do more damage when you hit them, and slightly less damage when you miss them. Experimental barrier. He has a longer cooldown when recalling it. It has less health. The barrier health regeneration is lower. The maximum range is no longer infinite because that's silly. The projectile speed is a little slower. The maximum duration is 10 seconds. After 10 seconds, it goes on an 8-second cooldown, and it will be recharging during that 8 seconds. Kinetic grasp. Damage absorbed is increased because his shield is a little weaker. Maximum overhealth health and absorbed is less because we want less giga tanking, and we want to remember that he will be paired with other tanks. Duration has been decreased from 2 seconds to 1.75 seconds. So he has to time his kinetic grasp a little bit better. The lift damage has been decreased, so the initial damage you take is less. The overall damage is the same. The activation delay is increased, so now people can actually move out of the way. The max range of it is decreased, so you can't do it from across the map, and it ignores damage reduction. Sigma has always had a very good ultimate, especially for people who know how to use his shield properly to block sleep and all sorts of stunning cooldowns. And you can just sit behind a shield, float in the air, and do 50% damage to your entire team. Damage reduction just makes sense. They said it was a bug. It's really a buff. It doesn't matter whether it was intended or not. Taking away a bug that reduces the hero's effectiveness is a buff. A buff he didn't need. So, Winston. He has more armor compared to his health now. This is to help him stop getting destroyed by heroes with shotguns effectively, especially seeing his armor was nerfed. This will help him. His damage per second has been decreased, his ammo has been decreased, but his reload time has also been decreased, just a little bit. The secondary fire, it now takes less ammo, so you can do it more often. It is generally more often. The barrier has less health and has lower uptime. And his jump pack, he can use it slightly less. Winston is one of the strongest dive tanks and has been for a long time. He will also, remember, get cooldowns now like Zarya Bubble or like Defense Matrix, where this isn't the only source of tanking on the field. So keep in mind, that's why it's getting nerfed. Primal Rage, his maximum hit points has been decreased, and his damage per swing has been decreased. Wrecking Ball is probably the most balanced tank right now, in that he tanks. He doesn't do a bucket load of damage. He just kind of tanks. He gains 25 overhealth now with Pile Driver. That lasts for 3 seconds with every enemy hit by Pile Driver, up to a maximum of 100. So he has an extra way to gain overhealth with a different shield, with a different cooldown now, to help him be more tanky, rather than having all of his tanking come at once, or all of his survivability hit at once. You can split it up more strategically. The minefield damage has been decreased, but not to an insignificant amount, and the health of each mine has been decreased. So yeah, him having 600 health, being able to gain almost 400 health, and then another 100 over health, he can still get pretty tanky. Now Zarya, Zarya has basically only got damage nerfs because she's Zarya, and her particle barrier has a little bit. So we'll go over it actually. The cooldown has been increased, the health has been decreased, the duration has been decreased, cannot be used again for an additional 4 seconds after she uses it. This promotes her to use it on her other tank. The cooldown, the health, the duration, all the same. Cannot be used again for an initial 4 seconds, but the maximum range has been decreased. This basically incentivizes her in this 4-second time period. She can either wait 4 seconds before bubbling herself, or bubble a teammate. And if she's bubbling a Reinhardt in, she can either wait 4 seconds to bubble a Reinhardt or bubble herself. This is supposed to make her use it more like the old bubbles where she had one for herself and one for her teammate, but she has a little bit more choice and is able to use it on her own. Okay, that's all the tanks. Onto the damage. On the most popular and most populated role, in terms of balance, my main goal is to pull the power levels of each individual damage hero closer together, keeping in mind the impact of their passives. The hero's identity is also very important, as it is in every role. And so, while I don't think removing one-shots is entirely possible without compromising some hero fantasies, I think that they should not be able to be pulled off so regularly and should come with sacrifices in other aspects of heroes' capabilities. I also think character health pools should be more reflective of their hitbox sizes and perhaps have the other parts of their kits improved to compensate. Okay, for example, Ashe. Ashe is very slender and plays pretty far back, so her having lower hit points makes sense to me. In terms of the Viper's hipfire damage, basically the spread is increased and the projectile radius is decreased a little bit because it's kind of spammy. This is to incentivize her to use it a little bit less without actually removing the damage. In fact, the damage is scaled up because of the range passive. The ammo has been significantly increased. The scoped, so she has more of a movement speed penalty. She has more ammo, of course, and the damage has been, of course, rescaled. Dynamite does a little bit less damage. Coach gun does kind of more damage. You can headshot with it now. It's just interesting to me. I think we should have any ability that can headshot or make sense to headshot, we use to headshot. Like, can you imagine how cool it would be to have a tracer blink into your face and you just pop them for 180 damage if you hit every single coach gun shot to the head? Like, that's cool. The knockback has been decreased on enemies because that's frustrating. The self knockback has been increased a little bit because A, kind of counteracts the enemy knockback a little bit from being decreased, and B, helps her get into stronger positions from further away, which makes sense because she has lower health, so helping her get stronger positions makes sense to me. Bob's health has been decreased. This is because there are more damage mitigation abilities. Bob's damage per shot has been increased. This is because he's a DPS ultimate. Its charge damage has been decreased, so you can use it less viably to just shoot it at one person and headshot them. Does not receive tank roll passives other than the main one, which is a reduction to stunning effects. Bastion, the interesting case, the curious case of Bastion. He still has 300 health. A lot of it is armor. Half of his health is armor. He has the Slayer passive. He is probably the least, or probably like the hero that plays the furthest back who gets the Slayer passive, just because he's so vulnerable. It's so easy to kill Bastion. More damage mitigation means it'll be a little bit easier to keep him alive, sure, but also more damage mitigation screws Bastion over because his damage output is severely decreased. The configuration recon, his damage has been scaled up a little bit, his rate of fire has been increased a little bit, projectile radius has been decreased a little bit. Okay, so higher potential damage output, lower average damage output, allowing for more skill expression. Configuration artillery gets a little mini buff. It's easy to hit these because I never see that happen, and it moves really slow and is very telegraphed. And he gains 50 overhealth the last 8 seconds. So now when he pops artillery, he's a little bit less vulnerable. You can still kill him. Especially considering his current total hit points would be equal to the amount of hit points he would get in artillery form. Anyway, so that's that. In terms of his other mode, I think it's kind of fine. Like making his recon mode more viable should be helpful to him. I don't want him to rely so much on the assault form. Cassidy. Cassidy, the first hero that gets like a full ability rework. We'll get to that when I scroll down a little bit. But Peacekeeper, it's rescaled because of the ranged passive. Secondary Fire is also rescaled, but also reduced due to the fact that it's rescaled. I don't want it to become too strong, and the projectile radius again, decreasing it to the 0.06 range. Combat roll damage reduction decreased from 50% to 30%, so instead damage reduction now lasts for an additional 1 second. So he can roll, and it's kind of more, he gets longer use out of it, the damage reduction, but it's less. Okay. Flashbang, this has kind of been partially reverted. So the damage has been reduced to 30 damage. Stuns for 0.5 seconds. Old flashbang, it stuns, but not for very long. The hinder duration is increased to 1 second, so you spend half your time being stunned and then ease out of it for half your time being hindered, meaning he will probably get one shot off where he can slowly correct his aim. The second shot, you get more of a chance to move, and it's at a 30%. Still 30% slow for a second is not nothing. The Deadeye ability is fully reworked. Unfortunately, Deadeye has almost no, it basically has no skill expression, so I kind of wanted to change it. And it's also donkey doo-doo. So Deadeye now increases Cassidy's damage by 50% for the next 6 shots for 6 seconds. Deadeye ends once all 6 shots have been fired, or after 6 seconds. Deadeye can be cancelled using secondary fire. So kind of you can imagine this sort of like a little bit of a toned down or slightly varied version of Sojourn's ultimate, where they still need to land their shots, but for a certain amount of time they are a little bit more impactful. The Peacekeeper has no damage fall off during Deadeye. Cassidy has a 30% movement speed penalty while Deadeye is active. 30% instead of the massive 70 that it starts off in Deadeye right now. Headshots during Deadeye restore 1 ammunition and extend the ability's duration by 0.5 seconds. So this is to basically, the more skill you have hitting headshots, the better the ultimate will be exponentially. While Deadeye is active, Cassidy takes 25% less damage to help him with that 30% move speed buff. He cannot crouch, jump, or use flashbang while channeling Deadeye. Now, he can still roll, which helps his mobility a little bit, gives him like a little boost of mobility, but it is you have to use it skillfully. And because Cassidy is this is like a big buff to Cassidy, obviously the damage reduction is reduced, so he will still die to kind of the same things that would kill him, almost. Enemies' heads are visually marked while channeling Deadeye. I can imagine this looking similarly to the way it already does, except instead of the skull or the circle kind of radius decreasing as the skull pops up, there's just a skull on enemies' heads kind of directing your eyes to them. Echo. So Echo's a flanker who likes to assassinate, and she has the Slayer passive, which suits her. Obviously, she flanks and she wants to burst heroes down. I just kind of decreased her bursting ability, gave her shields, so she's less reliant on a mercy pocket, and she's able to get back in a little more often. The damage repellent from Tri-Shot has been decreased. Ammo decreased. Reload time has also been decreased. This basically incentivizes her to assassinate and to kind of reduces her damage overall in terms of if she's firing at range. Now, Sticky Bomb direct damage has been increased and the explosion damage has been decreased, so rewards people more for hitting them than it does missing them and them splashing on the ground. Flight cooldown has been increased. Focusing beam cooldown has been decreased, but the minimum damage per second has been increased, and the maximum damage per second has been slightly decreased. So it doesn't matter too much or anywhere near as much if they're low HP, and if they are above half, you can probably burn them down a little bit better to get them below half now. Projectile radius has also been slightly decreased because it is kind of thick. 0.2 meters is still pretty thick, pretty easy. If you're good at tracking, you will still be able to burn people down. And yeah, the cooldown is obviously decreased. Duplicate, cast time and vulnerability has been increased. And well, mostly her hit point total has been increased as well. Um, it goes. This is mostly because the general percentage of her hit points in terms of your team's hit points will be decreased because there's 2 tanks. So having another kind of 400 HP hero on the field isn't anywhere near as impactful in 6v6 as it would be in 5v5. Echo's ultimate generation rate while duplicate has been slightly increased. Duplicate duration has been decreased, so it gives her less time to get the ultimate, but she can get it at the same rate as she's landing stuff. If Echo is reduced to 0 hit points, Echo reverts back to normal with 50 hit points and her shields begin regenerating immediately. So this means even when Echo was full HP, there's risk to her using duplicate in that if she is killed with her duplicate form, she will revert with 50 HP and no shields, but they will start regaining. In other words, you can't just duplicate an int anymore the same way you used to be able to and then fly away. Genji. Genji's an interesting one. He's had a little bit of a change that I think is interesting. I'm not sure. I don't play Genji. I play against Genji. But I do know kind of what makes Genji bad for most reasons. And the first thing I'm going to mention is the shurikens have been buffed. So there you go. Stay happy. I also think he should have a little bit of armor. This helps him against like small instances of damage, but still not against high damage skill shots. I think being able to headshot a Genji is a skill that should be rewarded, but I think landing little instances of damage on Genji for with high spread or high rate of fire damage should be a little bit nerfed, so it has been. His overall health has been slightly decreased, but I think the armor offsets it quite a bit. He gets the Slayer passive. I'm mentioning the Slayer passive over mentioning things like Focus and Strategist because Slayer passive for the heroes that have it is very impactful and needs to be taken into account more than others when tuning these things. So his damage per shuriken went up. Projectile radius has been decreased by a little bit, not too much. Secondary fire spread angle has been increased. So if he kind of needs to get in a little bit closer to be able to 3 shuriken people now with these 2 changes. The Swift Strike damage has been decreased from 50 to 30. The cooldown has been increased from 8 to 10, but it now has 2 charges, which allows him to do more interesting things with it. Like he can dash in and dash out without getting a kill to do 60 damage to somebody. Sure, he'll have to wait 20 seconds before getting them both in, but it's a free 60 damage in case he needs to finish somebody off, and it's no risk for him to do it. I think that the free damage on Swift Strike was also pretty annoying, that he could just kind of free get 50 damage, but now at least he has to dedicate more cooldowns to reach that same amount of damage. Eliminating an enemy decreases the remaining cooldown of 1 charge of Swift Strike by 5 seconds. It's a 10-second cooldown, so that's half. So imagine he Swift Strike in, he can Swift Strike out, and then if he gets that kill, 5 seconds later he can Swift Strike back in, get another kill, Swift Strike out. So it basically increases his value at the start of the fight if you want to use them more kind of heavily aggressively. This also helps with his ability to outplay cooldowns during Dragon Blade. Deflect, the cooldown has been increased, and the area of effect is a little smaller. This doesn't actually affect Genji, this just affects people's ability to shoot around Genji. But the cooldown being increased by 2 seconds is to offset the fact that he can super dash a little bit more. Dragon Blade average damage per swing has been increased. This only seems fair. He can 2-shot swing most heroes in the game. It makes sense. Activating Dragon resets 1 charge of Swift Strike, not both, but it does mean if you have both charges, you can dash and then dash again, and then Dragon Blade, and then dash again. Which, I mean, it's a lot of mobility, but it's an ultimate. I think that's fair. The fact that he has a longer cooldown on Deflect means that he will need that extra dash to outplay more abilities. It's also less damage, so things like Nano Blade are less effective with, or Nano is less effective with the blade, but the blade itself has been base buffed. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, Hanzo. This is probably like, I don't know. I had an epiphany with this one, and I feel like I kind of cooked. But I'll let you guys think about it. So his health is obviously he needs 250 health. I don't even like playing Hanzo. I don't even like playing against Hanzo, but he needs 250 health. We'll be real. Um, strategist and focused is specific, or strategist specifically, is very helpful for him. Seeing people, who break line of sight for another 0.5 seconds for him decreases the amount of times that Sonic Arrow is very necessary, but that'll be a rare edge case. Storm Bow, the time to fully charge has been decreased. It's still a little bit higher than it used to be a couple patches ago, but 0.75 is a nice round, fairly round number, easy to remember, and it'll feel relatively similar to what it used to be. For reference, it used to be 0.72, I think. So an extra 0.03 seconds, you'll barely feel it. Okay, Sonic Arrow cooldown has been decreased, but the duration and the area of effect have also been decreased. So you have to kind of think about where you're putting your Sonic Arrows a little bit more. You won't be able to hold multiple angles, have information on multiple angles with Sonic Arrow as often, but you do get to use it a little bit more. So yeah, you can reposition it more, but its uptime is, I think, around the same, a little bit less. Storm Arrow, ability name changed from Storm Arrows. The ability's been fully reworked. So now this adds an effect to Hanzo's next arrow, causing it to deal an additional 25 damage on impact and 25 damage again after a 1 second delay. This effect's damage is not increased by the headshot damage multiplier. The ability is a toggleable modifier, in the same way Sonic Arrow is. Sonic Arrow and Storm Arrow can be fired as a single arrow. So imagine this arrow is basically works exactly the same way as Sonic Arrow. You activate it before you shoot the bow, or as you have the bow drawn back. But this one basically just increases its damage by a flat 25 as it hits, and then 1 second delay does a little 25 damage, a little lightning zap or storm zap, if you will. So this basically means that every 10 seconds, the cooldown's increased to 10 seconds, and the cooldown starts after the arrow has been fired. Every 10 seconds, Hanzo has the potential to deal 300 damage in a single headshot, allowing him to eliminate any squishy in the game, effectively. With the exception of Bastion because of armor's damage reduction. But everything else, that's Reaper, that's Torbs, that's a whole bunch of stuff, he can one-shot. It is once every 10 seconds. His normal arrows can still one-shot. He has no storm arrows, the old storm arrows. His normal arrows can still one-shot 250 health targets. But basically what this means is if you activate this and shoot it at a Cassidy, he will die if you hit him in the head. If you hit a Reaper in the head, he will get zapped for 25, and if he has no Wraith, he will die in the next second, unless he gets healed. That 1 second delay is mostly to allow a little bit of counterplay for those high health heroes. Maybe this would be a 0.5 second delay, but it's the same amount of delay as Tracer's Pulse Bomb in live and as the sticky bombs for Echo on live, so I thought it was a decent place to start. Now the reason it doesn't add in it doesn't increase with the headshot modifier is because A, it's a little bit of lightning damage, I'm imagining, so it doesn't make sense, excuse me. But B, if you hit a body shot on this, it will do 150 damage plus 25, so 175 total. This only one-shots 2 heroes in the game. Well, 3 if you include Baby D.Va. We'll get to those heroes later. But you have to sacrifice your 10-second ability to do it if you want to just aim at the body and hit this, which I think is fair. He loses a lot of his ability to survive dives, but I think that his raw capability to murderize a whole bunch of the cast with a single arrow is fair. And of course, the arrow's size was decreased in the last patch, so that's nice. That's fair. Dragon Strike. Damage per second has been greatly increased. The cast time has been slightly decreased. The speed of the arrow, of the dragon has been increased. Now that does in turn also nerf the total amount of damage it does to a still target, but that's why I increased the damage. These changes are kind of to incentivize a big burst of aimed damage, as well as this one. You have to kind of aim it a little bit more, still very big. It's to incentivize a little bit more like bursty aim damage to kind of complement Hanzo's playstyle. But it's less standing around behind cover waiting for the dragon to move out of the way before you can get back to the business you were trying to get to. So it's less of a zoning tool, which makes sense. To me. The initial arrow's duration has been increased from 0.5 seconds to 1 second. You know those clips of headshotting traces or whatnot through a wall with the Hanzo's initial Dragon Strike arrow? Basically, you get more of that. And this is kind of its own buff, but it's basically a side effect due to the travel speed of the arrow. It will go 20 meters instead of 10. So you can try, it's more viable to try and just headshot somebody with this if they are in your face or if they're a little bit like 20 meters or less away. And I think that's interesting. So Junkrat, I'm leaning him into more of the dive hero that many higher rank Junkrats love to play him as, and away from the spamming hero. So that means he gets less health, but he also gets a Slayer passive, which is a little bit of reward for him taking the risk and getting the kills. The direct damage for Frag Launcher has been greatly increased, the splash damage has been slightly decreased, so the total is actually a little bit higher for him. The ammo is more, the reload time is also more. So once he misses those 6 shots, he's reloading for an extra 0.3 seconds longer. He is a high damage hero. This feels like it makes sense. A grenade launcher should not reload quickly. Knockback speed has been decreased just slightly to stop you from bouncing around the place when you get hit. The projectile speed has been increased a little bit. That is to help offset this, which is a decrease in the radius. Again, I feel like explosive radii don't need to be so big. So it's been mildly decreased. Concussion Mine does less damage, cooldown has been increased, the area of effect radius has been decreased, and the enemy knockback has been slightly decreased as well. So this is a straight nerf to Concussion Mine because honestly it's just his much less skilled version of Frag Launcher, which, yeah. So the Frag Launcher, I kind of want people to rely more on that than the Concussion Mine. Sure, the Concussion Mine is still decent with 100 damage onto it. You can use this and this to combo 225 HP heroes or less, which there are slightly more of, I believe, with the exception of Hanzo. I think Hanzo's the only hero that got a health buff. Steel Trap duration has been significantly decreased, and the area of stepping into it has been decreased as well. This is because the ability is pretty lame. That's all I have to say about it. Riptire, the damage has been decreased, or the max damage has been decreased. The minimum damage has actually been increased, so I should have written descaled instead of decreased. Area of effect has been decreased. The health has been slightly increased. The movement speed has been slightly decreased. The recovery time after using it, after it explodes, has also been decreased, so you get control of your character a little bit faster. I feel like those are fair changes. Riptire is in the highest skilled of abilities. You can send it into the skybox still. You can send it on people's heads. You can use it behind people after landing behind them. All of that stuff still works. It kind of just reduces the brain dead, I'm going to drive into you and wiggle a little bit. Mei. So Mei's health has been decreasing a lot of things' health. Mei does not need 300 health. She's already very tanky. And don't forget, the damage output of tanks has been significantly nerfed as well. So it feels healthy to reduce some high health heroes' health. She's in line with Cassidy now, which just makes sense to me looking at their hitboxes. Her ammo's been decreased. Her damage per second on this has been slightly increased because I understand it's risky to get in there, and we'll cover her risks a little bit more in a moment. The blaster secondary fire, the damage has been decreased, so you can no longer two-shot headshot a DPS with this, I believe. No, you can two-shot headshot, but you can't headshot body shot a DPS with this. I think that's fair, unless they're a low health DPS, and then you can. Cast time per shot has been decreased, and the recovery time has been increased. This results in her having the same rate of fire, but her being able to use her secondary fire, I should say, a little bit more reactively. Means if a Tracer blinks on you or a Genji dashes on you, you can get that first shot off a little bit quicker. Which is kind of, I want to lean her more into a hero that is good against flankers, but less good against poke heroes. Projectile radius has been decreased just a little bit. The cryo freeze is an interesting case. Cooldown has been increased. Cooldown now begins as soon as the ability has been cast, so this kind of offsets each other. The healing per second has been decreased because she has less health. The ammo restored per second has been increased because she's a DPS. I want her to be doing damage more. And cryo freeze now has 75 hit points and can be damaged by enemies. If it is destroyed, the ability ends prematurely. So using cryo freeze in front of 6 people is no longer as viable. You will get your cryo freeze cracked, broken, and destroyed. This is also why this begins as soon as it does, because the cryo freeze is going to break at various different times. 750 hit points, however, is a lot of hit points for any one person or even 2 people to go through. So in your 1v1s or in your I'm getting dove moments, it should still be enough for you to get a good amount of healing going. But it is not a huge amount of health for 3 or more people to break. Of course, values can be changed, especially number values. I think this is an interesting idea because it gives interaction to this ability that didn't exist before. But yeah, still good defensive ability. Ice Wall, the cooldown has been increased, the duration has been increased. This means that you will be walling off tanks less often, but when you do, it'll be more impactful, or at least tanks will have to, or teams will have to react a little bit better. Blizzard's damage per second has been increased. She's a DPS hero. The duration has been decreased. This means that you're no longer sitting there frozen for super long. Again, if something is going to kill me slowly, or something is going to probably kill me, I'd rather have it kill me quickly than have it kill me slowly. Area of effect radius has been decreased. It was a very big area. I might do something else because I'm aware that there are a lot of abilities that can eat this ability. Farah. Okay. Farah just spends too much time in the sky in a place where only hit scans can deal with her, and even hit scans can't deal with her very well because of damage drop off and the ability to play around walls that you can't push, because if you try and push her high cover wall, you just end up directly beneath her and you can't kill her if you're directly beneath her. Don't be silly. So if she plays correctly, she can play behind cover and you can never ever kill her, and she gets to free spam unless you're Widow. Widow's getting nerfed, don't even think she's not. She has the Slayer passive because now she will be playing more a risky game. Her hover jets are louder. This is because her hover jets need to be louder. Refuel rate is decreased. I want to decrease the amount of time she's high in the air. Rocket launcher direct damage increased and splash damage decreased to promote more skill. The projectile speed has been decreased. The projectile radius has been decreased. These 2 changes alone made Farah meta for so long. So they're kind of just been reverted back. In fact, this is still bigger than the size of projectiles in before Season 9. There was 0.25 meters, 0.3 meters is the middle ground. Jet Dash. Cooldown has been increased, but it now has 2 charges. After using the Jet Dash ability, it cannot be used again for 1.2 seconds. This kind of works in a similar way if you played Marvel Rivals or saw any of the footage of Star-Lord, where you get to kind of dash a little bit more frequently, but it's a less valuable cooldown, I guess, because the movement speed has been decreased, the duration has been slightly decreased. It now does restore your hoverjet fuel by 15%, as do her other abilities like Jump Jet. Jump Jet's cooldown greatly increased, the max vertical range has been decreased, and the movement speed has been slightly decreased. These 2 abilities are basically the same thing, written in different ways. Yeah. Barrage. Farah is no longer horizontally locked into position, so it means she still floats in the air the same way, but she can kind of pivot herself. She can kind of mid-air strafe. Her movement penalty is 40%, however. Okay, Reaper. Reaper's in a decent place. It's just kind of strong, and making Reaper have the Slayer passive means I obviously have to reduce the reapening the reaping, I should say, reaping. Um, this means there's more risk to Reaper going in, but he gets a little bit more reward. Because Reaper still has 300 HP, he gets the most reward out of the Slayer passive, as well as Bastion, because while other heroes will get maybe 30 to 50 health, Reaper and Bastion get 60, just because it's a percentage based off of their health. They get 60 health for their kills. Reaper's Hellfire shotguns have been decreased in terms of their range, and their spread angles increased, so it'll decrease the amount of damage you do at long range, meaning again he has to risk more getting up close. But a single kill will get you 60 HP, and dealing damage to like a 250 HP target will get you like something like 60 health, 62 health. So overall, killing a target will get you like 120 health. So Reaper's a big bulky guy, so he takes a lot of damage. 120 health for a kill is fair, but you actually have to get the kill. Sojourn, her health has been decreased. She's slender, and I kind of wanted to push her into more of a extreme version of Soldier 76, who we'll get onto next. Health has been decreased. She has strategist and focus. She doesn't need the ranged passive because she shoots projectiles, and her railgun is fine. So damage increased, ammo decreased. This makes her a little bit more bursty. Not too bursty. It means she has to conserve ammo a little bit more, and it does also mean that she will be building railgun ever so slightly slower, because she'll need to reload a little bit more often. So you will probably get at maximum 2 railgun charges if you're hitting most of your shots, but usually like 1.5, 1 and 2/3 railgun charges, which I think is fair. Her railgun her damage has been increased or rescaled. Well, yeah, increased the scaling from 1 to 100 to 110 to 11. So even if you only have a single point, it won't do 1 point of damage because that's laughably bad. It will do 11. It's basically your charge plus 10. This means that with the fully charged headshot, because it's at a 1.5 times multiplier, it will do 165 damage, which is much better than 150. Feels much more substantial. You can one-shot a Tracer because her health has been decreased. It's more impactful into things like Genji and other low HP targets like a Kiriko or whatnot. Power slide cooldown increased, jump height increased, and the improved jump can now be banked for 0.5 seconds after using power slide, similar in practice to Baptiste's Exo Boost. The improved jump being banked is just a quality of life thing. How many times have you slid into something or tried to slide jump and your toe touches a wall and you can no longer do the super jump? This just banks it for 0.5 seconds, so you can slide, stop sliding, and then jump. Soldier sucks right now. He's the worst DPS. Don't argue with me. He's also pretty hard to play because tracking is just the harder aim style. He's doggy doo-doo and has been for a while, and he's my favorite DPS. But I'm trying not to be biased here, and I did get I was in talks with Gale, the rank 1 soldier, and he gave me a couple pointers, his opinion on the hero. So he obviously gets the ranged passive, the strategist passive. Damage per shot has been rescaled, so it does 20 to 10 damage now. His damage fall off range has been decreased, however. This will basically mean he's doing max damage a little bit less, get him to play a little bit closer up. The Helix rockets, the projectile radius has been decreased the same way Pharah's and Junkrat's was. Direct hit damage has been increased a little bit, and the splash damage ever so slightly decreased. It's not very significant, but I just kind of want to lean into this more direct hit focus. Like if you can land the direct hit, you get a little bit more value than not. He has a movement speed buff of 60%. This is Overwatch 1 value, and in context with other things nerfed, this just makes sprint much better. I mean, he sacrifices his ability to do damage, his ability to do anything other than sprint. It's one of the few abilities that sacrifices his capabilities greatly. So it's rewarded with an extra 10%. Biotic field cooldown decreased, healing per second increased from 40 to 45. The cooldown's decreased because it never needed to go up, really. And the healing is increased because there's a DPS passive in play now. it will affect you like 85 to 90% of the time you're actually using this cooldown. So this boost in value just helps you survive things now. And especially with like things like micro missiles, you try and drop your heal on micro missiles in the current patch, you're wasting your time. You are dead, and not only are you dead, but you wasted your time because you didn't output any damage because you were dropping biotic field. Tactical visor needed a full rework as well. Zolgar 1, Tactical Visor's sound effect volume has been decreased by 80. I've heard Gale talking about this. I couldn't agree more. Tactical Visor should not give away Soldier's position. It's just too easy to outplay him. Bullets from Heavy Pulse Rifle now deal 200% damage to barriers during Tactical Visor. This is to stop the viability of shoving a shield in Soldier's face, because 2 tanks, remember. Because now if you do, you're sacrificing that shield a lot more. And he has the potential to burn through it and do more damage. Damage per bullet has been increased in Tactical Visor from 19 to 25. You might actually be able to get kills. This means that compounded with this, each bullet does 50 damage to shields. So you do not want to be running a shield-based hero into Visor. You more want to be running defense matrix and those sorts of things, and a movement speed buff to his actual shooting because it was way too easy to kite. People will say, hey man, this is just a net buff to Visor, you didn't do anything to take away anything. Well, yeah, it's bad. It's bad old. There will still be cases where this feels useless. Diva will still fly into you and defense matrix it, and then you'll be staring at a full or like a half HP Reinhardt shield for most of it, and you might get like 1 or 2 kills, best. But I'm also considering that you would damage boost this a little bit more often because it's just higher damage. Sombra, health decreased to 200. Sounds extreme, right? Well, we'll get to it. So passives are there. Stealth detection radius has been increased so you can see her better when she's running around. She can hide less in corners. This should in turn decrease the amount of time she is in stealth, but I didn't want to completely remove infinite stealth, mostly because I don't really play Sombra and I have no idea what would feel good or bad to have the stealth at, and I think this is a decent workaround to it. The machine pistol's damage has been increased, but the ammo has been decreased. This complements her bursty style. The hack time, cast time has been increased moderately. Minimum range has been decreased. And now has a new mechanic. Hacking enemies grants 25 overhealth for 3 seconds up to a maximum of 75 health. This is only important during her ultimate, but this kind of puts her back to the 225 area that she's currently in, which incentivizes her to try and hack more often, even though it may be a little bit more difficult and you may have to get closer. Virus impact damage has been slightly decreased, just slightly, and the projectile radius has been decreased to a number that if you're skilled you'll still hit it every time. Translocator cooldown has been slightly increased too. Now, EMP damage has been increased from 20% of current health to 30% of maximum health. This is a big damage increase. It means she does not need to use this only to engage, because basically if you use this like in the middle or near the end of a fight, it was kind of trash because it's 20% of current health. If somebody has 50 health, you take away 25% of that, 12.5 hit points. What a joke. 30% of maximum health. So now EMP can actually get its own kills if something is 30% health or lower. Ability disable duration has been decreased to 2 seconds, and area of effect radius has been decreased as well. Symmetra is an interesting kind of similar case to Sombra, where I decreased their overall health to fit more their health points, but then also gave them a way to gain overhealth. So Symmetra has Slayer because there's more risk to her kit now. That's a theme. The photon projector's max range has been increased. The radius has been decreased, incentivizing more skill and aim. Splash damage increased on secondary fire because this should be a little harder to hit but do a little more damage. Sentry turrets. She now has 5 charges, and the cooldown is decreased to 8 seconds. The damage per second is decreased. The maximum range is increased. The projectile speed is increased, so she can place it better. And the enemy reveal duration has been increased. These are now used more for intel and less for raw damage. You can still throw 5 of them up and do 100 damage per second, but you're using all 5 of your charges, and it's less viable than just using these to help you and your team get intel on enemy flankers or something similar. The teleporter cooldown has been increased, the health has been increased, the shields have been increased, the total hit points obviously has been increased, the duration has been increased, and after teleporting, cooldown before players can teleport again has been increased. So there's more risk to using this teleporter. It stays up for longer, so you got to think about more where you place it, but it's healthier, so it should stay up for a little bit longer. Symmetra now gains 25 overhealth for 10 seconds after using teleporter. This effect does not trigger if Symmetra has already been granted overhealth from the ability in the past 10 seconds. This means Symmetra is incentivized to put her teleporter in a place where she wants to play more often, and it's more incentivized to use it as a move my team from here, this power point to this power position, I should say, rather than I'm going to try and run away from the dive right now by putting my teleporter down and going through it. Photon Barrier's health has been decreased because she's not a tank. It's a little bit silly, but she now kind of supports her allies in giving them overhealth. This will replace her own overhealth from the teleporter upon casting, and all your sentry turrets also gain a little bit of overhealth during your ult. So Photon Barrier has been moved away a little bit from barrier and more a little bit about team protection. This helps you use it more aggressively, and it becomes less of a tank feeling ult and more of a DPS feeling ult, hopefully, without actually increasing her damage output. Every kill she gets, she does heal a little bit of her max HP. Torbjorn, did you guys know Torbjorn's OP right now? Torbjorn's got like the highest win rate in like every rank except GM, where instead it's like the 3rd highest. Like, my guy's a menace. Anyway, he got nerfed. The deployed turret, the health has been increased. The damage per shot has been decreased, the attack range has been decreased, and the duration has been decreased from infinite to 30 seconds. This is to remove a lot of the damage output from the turret. Instead, what I want him to rely more on is overload, where the cooldown has been slightly increased, but the duration has been increased. So it's got about almost a little less than 30% uptime, something like that. It has more uptime. The primary fire recovery rate increase has been removed. The secondary fire recovery rate increase has been removed. And the Forge Hammer, basically he can't smack things faster or shoot things faster. It is purely used to increase his health, give him infinite ammo, and increase his movement speed, which wasn't changed. Molten Core, damage per second has been decreased, but the damage against armor has been increased. This is kind of to incentivize them to use it to shred armor and less to burst down little squishies. The area of effect radius has been decreased, so it hopefully matches more what the hitbox looks like, but the ammo has been increased to offset the total amount of splurge on the map. That's right. Tracer, health decreased. She has shields instead. Her total hit points is 150 with 50 shields. She has the Slayer passive, obviously. It works really well for her. The recall cooldown was reset to what it was before, 12 seconds, because she takes more risk now. She, as a hero, can be burst down by a lot of things with 150 health. With 50 shields, and also the Slayer passive, it helps her keep her tempo in long-running team fights. And basically, unless she's getting bursted, she's kind of got the same amount of survivability, almost. Well, she does, because she gets an extra 30 health every kill. Final blow, I should say. The pulse bomb duration after stick has been decreased. This removes a lot of this basically makes it harder to Suzu and Immortality Field. It's an ultimate. It shouldn't be getting countered by abilities that easy, so you have to react a little bit faster. The area of effect, however, is decreased, so you gotta stick it more. Venture. So, Venture gets Slayer. which means that their shields are replaced with overhealth, and it's the time that they get it is reduced. Shields is obviously way better than overhealth because it can be healed back up. So that's why it's down. They also have the Slayer passive. The damage from melee has been reduced. The direct hit damage increased. The splash damage decreased on their primary, and the projectile radius put in line with other things. Drill Dash. It's got a damage decrease, a range decrease, a knockback decrease, and an underground knockback decrease. This ability is a little silly, a little dumb, a little annoying. Burrow, the cooldown has also been, well, the cooldown has been increased. It's the only cooldown that's increased. Max charge max charge damage is decreased. The minimum charge damage is decreased as well. But because of the amount of benefit that this hero gets from the Slayer passive, I think it's fair to be nerfing all of these things. Now, Tectonic Shock's damage has been increased, the duration has been decreased, and the spread angle has been decreased. So, for most things, decreasing the spread angle is a buff. For this, it is a nerf. It means you have to aim it a little bit better. The duration is a nerf, but the damage means that if you hit your shots, you do more. Widowmaker. The biggest undertaking of this one was Widowmaker for sure. She's a problem. She basically takes no risk, has no risk, but has such great output where she is on live. So her health is lower. Hip fire. Damage per shot is lower. Damage fall off range is decreased. The ammo is increased. Sorry. The reload time is also increased. Heavy weapons, the way that I see it, heavy weapons, their reload time is 1.8, light weapons is 1.2, normal weapons is 1.5. There are a few exceptions, and by a few I mean Orissa's reload, but other than that, and Bastion's, other than that, there isn't. Scoped. All off range is decreased. There are less times where she can one-shot you from a distance, like from an uncontestable distance. Charging time increased. I know this will feel like trash at first. That's just the way it's got to be. The hero is a little strong. Widowmaker is now forced to fully zoom out after each shot. This basically increases the recovery time. Ammo per shot is increased from 5 to 10, meaning she can get 4 shots off before she needs to reload. The projectile radius is smaller because, guys, when you zoom in, when you decrease something's field of vision, everything in that field of vision gets bigger, like a scope. So the projectile size gets relatively bigger to the amount of screen space she has. So that's been reduced. Moving while scoped now increases Widow's Kiss's spread angle from 0 to 1.5 degrees over 0.25 seconds. After moving, the spread angle will reset back to 0 over 0.5 seconds. This effect is also active while jumping and falling. This basically functions how snipers function in other games. When you're moving, you're less accurate with the sniper, incentivizing you to stand still, making you more vulnerable to damage, increasing the amount of risk that you have to take in order to get the headshot. And a red glint is added to Widowmaker's character model while scoped because obvious reasons. The hook cooldown has been increased, so you have to commit to your position a little more, and infrasight has been changed. The duration has been decreased from 15 to 12 seconds. Widowmaker cannot use grappling hook during infrasight. The forced zoom out is removed, so you get to shoot more often. And Widowmaker cannot be revealed by the strategist damage roll sub passive during infrasight. The sonic arrow and getting hacked still reveals you, but not the DPS passive. These changes to Widowmaker will hopefully mean that she can one-shot just slightly less, or at least she has less opportunities to one-shot. She will still be able to hard-scope a corner and you will run it and die. But after she takes that first shot, her downtime is increased a little bit. It's more risky for her to be taking that shot, and she has to reload more often. So, okay, and on to support. I want the support cast to maintain their abilities to make plays with both their defensive abilities and their damage output depending on each individual's hero identities, but scaling the difficulty of the ability more in line with its value and playmaking potential. Making slight fundamental changes to key problematic abilities and value outputs of some heroes is the general goal at the adjustments here, as well as moving some supports in more diverse directions in their applications. Okay, Ana got like no changes. She gets the evasive and the protector, so she moves a little faster at full HP after 3 seconds, and she heals 10% more to tanks. Sleep Dark cooldown has been reduced a little bit. The duration has been decreased a little bit. This actually is more than the tanks get slept currently by 0.6 seconds, but less for squishies by 0.5. So it's kind of a net buff. I think that you're more likely to hit the tanks with it anyway, but the reason it's on a lower cooldown is because there are more tanking defensive abilities, so you can throw it out a little more often, and it's a skill shot. Projectile radius has been teeny tiny decreased, so you get hit less in the ankle even though it's about 800 miles away from you. Butter Grenade, the cooldown has been increased, but the duration has also been increased, so its uptime is about the same. I just want to increase it because there's going to be more peel. She has the support passive to heal herself. So this will be used more offensively, and the amount of times you get to take a chance at choosing your windows to use it are slightly decreased. Nothing big, nothing massive. Everything else is the same. Baptiste, his exo boot charge time has been decreased, but his maximum height has also been decreased. Biotic Launcher, the damage per round has been decreased because he's a support. Reload has been increased as well because he has a lot of ammo. He gets to have 2 separate ammo resources, I should say. The secondary fire, the direct healing is increased, so he does a little bit more total healing, but the radius is decreased, so he will heal more if you're more skilled on single targets. He will heal a little bit less in a group. He has to reload a little less often due to the fact that it's a little longer reload. Regen Burst no longer instantly heals. Extra for 50 allies who are below half health. Instant healing is decreased to just a straight 30, and healing over time is increased from 10 healing per second to 15 healing per second. So it's like basically a middle ground between the 2 values that he could get, but this one is less about burst healing and more about healing over time, so you can still kill things through it. Immortality Field, the cooldown has been decreased, the health has been decreased, the duration has been decreased, meaning that he has to use it more in time with whatever he's trying to block. 5 seconds is a long time. If he wants to corner peek with his MO field, he still can, just for less long. It basically means if Pulse Bomb's coming, this will still save you. If there's Diva Bomb, this will still save you. In fact, it's kind of better against those specific abilities if you time it well because it's 20 seconds. But in things that have a bigger effect, like generally in team fights, this will be less useful because of the duration. Amplification Matrix has a cast time now because you should be able to cancel it. This is the same cast time as Ana's Nano. So it should get counted if you jump into the enemy team and try and use it in front of them and you're not actually any good at the game. Cast time recovery increased, so he can't just use it to again burst people down. This won't actually affect your teammates shooting through it. It just means you can't solo things quite as quickly. Ultimately, 2 very small changes. Brig, the mini tank. These passives, area of effect radius of Inspire's decreased because it's huge. Hitting mines, no, this is a bug that they just never removed, but they should. Repair Pack, the cooldown's increased from 5 to 8 seconds. Instant healing is decreased. Healing over time duration is increased, and the healing over time is decreased. So, or the healing per second of the overtime. So it's actually a little bit more healing in total, but it's less burst healing, which is what's unhealthy about it. Whip Shot, the cooldown is increased to 6 seconds. The max range is decreased, and hitting enemies with Whip Shot now resets the cooldown of 1 charge of Repair Pack. Interesting. So she has 3 charges of her repair pack, and if she hits a 6-second cooldown, she can get one of them back. Um, the cooldown generally is increased. So now it means you have slightly higher uptime if you're actually landing your whip shots. Whoa, skill expression. Now, I'm not saying Brig didn't have skill expression, but I'm saying this is more of that. So if you're good at hitting your whip shots on Brig, you will have a very good uptime with your repair packs, and you will be healing more per second in general. Barrier shield, health during rally is decreased. It's just a little silly. The shield bash damage is increased, the maximum range is decreased, and the movement speed buff is decreased. Again, these two things stack together. They're kind of the same statistic written in different ways, but okay, sarah. Rally. Brigida's armor gained during rally is replaced with overhaul. This is the same change that I made to Ramatra. Gaining armor is a silly mechanic. You should not be able to gain armor. You should gain overhealth. Maximum overhealth granted to allies is slightly decreased because you can grant it to more allies. They're being 5 allies, I guess. Self-movement speed buff is increased. Rally no longer resets the cooldown of Shield Bash. Shield Bash no longer stuns during Rally. And Rally now resets the cooldown of 1 charge of repair pack. So your goal with Brig now is to kind of get more repair packs by hitting your whip shot and obviously by using Rally. And that will increase your healing output because your healing output is slightly decreased due to the fact that your Inspire is a little smaller. This is an insane, absurd size, by the way. It's insane that they think that that's cool. Ilari. So, the first hero that we're reaching here that has replaced Zen in terms of the damage output. Now, Baptiste kind of did as well, but Baptiste it's a different can of worms because Baptiste's healing is not kind of set and forget in the same way that Ilari's and Zen is. So, the solar rifle maximum damage has been decreased just a little bit. Damage fall off range decreased from 30 to 50 to 20 to 40. This means she has to be a little bit closer and can't snipe things quite as well. Headshot modifier is increased, so she can do more maximum damage. But I think that that's healthy. I think that that's fair. Her projectile radius is decreased to a more normal number. Healing pylon cooldown increased from 7 or 14 seconds, depending on if it took damage or was destroyed, to 15 seconds. The cooldown now starts as soon as healing pylon is deployed. You guys know what that means. The duration has been decreased from infinite to 6 seconds. That's right, she cannot keep her pylon up infinitely. What a silly, broken idea that was. Maximum range of it has also been decreased. You need to think about where you're placing this now. I'm sorry, but you do. But as a trade-off, your headshots do more damage. So there you go. Captive Sun, the Sunstruck explosion damage has been decreased significantly. Sunstruck debuff has been duration has been decreased by 2 seconds. The flight duration is increased, meaning you can position yourself a little bit more. You can be a little bit more evasive, especially with evasive. Movement slow is decreased as well. I like reducing movement slows. They are annoying. Juno. So, Juno's in a pretty decent spot. She's quite strong though. So reducing her damage per bullet, but making it so that you can actually crit, will increase her overall damage output for good heroes, or for good players, and will not for poorer players. The damage of torpedoes has been decreased as well to offset that. The glide boost duration is decreased because I want her more to be able to be punished. It still has a 50% uptime, by the way. The hyper ring cooldown has been decreased, but the movement speed buff has been decreased as well. So this means she's less of a Lucio with the amount of speed boost that she can give other players in terms of the actual speed. But its uptime is up a little bit more. Orbital rays. It just looks redder. Not really a balance change, but I've been having trouble telling enemy Juno's orbital rays apart from my teammates, and I know other players have too. So making things clearer to the player is never a bad idea. Kiriko. I don't have a space in between these. Now I do. And this should be viewing. Kiriko. She has had her healing per talisman decreased. Her ammo is increased, so again, less bursty heals. The reload time is increased, and the homing projectile speed is increased, so it means she can react a little bit better, but it's less burst healing. The damage has been decreased on her kunai, just a little bit. It only affects certain breakpoints, mostly with tanks and 300 health heroes. Otherwise, it's kind of the same. Rate of fire has been increased just a little bit. This actually should not be these values. Actually, I don't think I kept it in when I decreased her damage. I think I kind of just removed it. Forget I said anything. It must have just not saved. But there you go. Reload time is increased to keep it in line with other fast reloads. It's crazy that it was at 1 second and this was at 0.8 seconds. I think that's a little silly. Projectile size is decreased as well, putting it in line with more projectiles. Swift step. The cooldown has been decreased. I know, insane. But the range has also been decreased significantly, and you can no longer target allies through walls. That's right, you need to learn how to position if you want to be a risky, high damage output hero. Protection Suzu, the cooldown has been increased, the healing has been increased, the cleanse healing has been decreased. These two are the same value, by the way, now. The invulnerability duration has been decreased, but it now amplifies healing by 25% for 2.5 seconds. This is why I added in the whole thing about healing amplification not being additive. Ultimately gives it a little bit more uses for it. It was kind of already used for this to keep heroes that are low up anyway, but this part, the 0.65 to 0.5 means, again, you have to be more skilled with your timing when using this ability. Lifeweaver. Now, for a time, I didn't know what to do with Lifeweaver. In fact, I skipped him and did him last. For a little bit, I had written here, listen, I don't know, but I decided to not give up and it did my best. This one is the one that I'm probably least confident in the whole thing. The hero's just whack. Maximum charge has been healing has been decreased, but the charge time has also been decreased, so it feels more reactive. The ammo has been decreased and the reload time has been decreased. Thorn Volley. The rate of fire has been slightly increased to help the damage output, but the ammo has been decreased, meaning that you can't just spam all your shots down mid. It's better to try and obviously aim, try and do as much damage as you can with your more limited ammo, which this isn't very limited. 12 shots per second, 60 shots. He can be shooting for 5 seconds straight. The reload time is decreased as well. Life grip. The cooldown is decreased, the healing is increased, the maximum range decreased, and allies can now cancel. The maximum range being decreased means that he has to either play in a closer position to whoever he's pulling, or he has to coordinate with whoever he's pulling to play closer to him. Okay, Tree of Life. The health has been decreased, the healing per pulse has been decreased, and the duration has been decreased. But the counter side is that the rate of fire of the tree is a little bit faster. So overall it heals almost the same, but per second it heals a little bit more. That is to help him feel a little bit more reactive, hopefully. Lucio, his wall ride movement speed buff is decreased. This is to counteract the evasive passive. Sonic Amplifier damage per round is decreased to 19. Still more than it used to be, honestly, a little bit. I could have put it down to 18 again, but I thought 19 was fair, especially because his sound wave is getting a damage reduction and a maximum range decrease, so he has to kind of be closer to you. The crossfade area of effect is decreased. The amp it up movement speed buff is decreased from 60 to 50 to keep it more in line with other abilities. Overhealth decreased from 750 for sound barrier to 1000, but its duration is decreased. This means it's better for tanking big bursts of damage like Diva Bomb, or like maybe various other abilities like the Hanzo's faster, higher damage dragons, but it is less effective at keeping people alive through channeled ultimates that last a longer time. Uh, that is to say, like Visor or like High Noon or like Dragon Blade. Sorry, High Noon, Deadeye. I mean, um, the new Deadeye that lasts longer. Um, yeah, so it's higher high, lower low, if that makes sense. Mercy. Now, Mercy needed a full rework because she kind of just doesn't work the way that she is. The sympathetic recovery passive is removed. Healing per second decreased from 60 to 55. That's still decent. Remember when it was 50? Now it's 55 from 60. Damage amplification is fully reworked. Okay, so listen to this. Staff Caduceus staff damage amplification now depletes a resource meter. When this meter is fully depleted, the damage amplification is decreased from 30% to 20%. The resource meter takes 10 seconds to be fully depleted and will begin recharging when not in use with a 0.2 second delay. Basically what this means is that she has to manage the resource of her damage boost, and she can't, when it reaches the end, she can't just flicker it on and off. The meter takes 8 seconds to recharge from 0 to 100%. Dealing damage with Caduceus Blaster recharges the resource meter at a rate of 5% per projectile landed. The beam changes color, by the way. So this incentivizes her to use her pistol more. It actually makes using the pistol meaningful. It increases your uptime of damage amplification. And if you're a casual Mercy player who doesn't want to be bothered doing that, you can do that. You can still just damage amp, but suffer the consequences of the fact that if you damage amp for too long, it'll only be a 20% damage boost, which doesn't get you to the same breakpoints as a 30%, or just the same amount of value, obviously. Caduceus Blaster reload time has been decreased to keep it in line more with those fast reloads of 1.2. Projectile radius is also decreased because that's massive, that's wild. And Guardian Angel. This is a change to help her kind of movement skill ceiling. So now it's 2 charges. The cooldown is increased. The crouch vertical jump movement speed has been decreased, so that's less viable just pressing crouch and jump. Pressing jump and back simultaneously will no longer launch Mercy backwards, but instead launch Mercy forward at a slower speed than a normal forward jump, similar in practice to Winston's jump pack. So if you jump while holding back, you'll still go forward, but just not as far. No more slingshotting yourself backwards. Guardian Angel cannot be used again for an additional 1 second after use, meaning it has 2 charges, its cooldown is 2.25 seconds each, so you can use it once, and then after 1 second you can use it again if you want to burn both your charges quickly, and then you'll have to wait for another about 1.25 seconds before you get another one. But after that, you're out. After your third, you will have to wait the full 2.25 seconds. That is this rewards kind of balancing your Guardian Angels, kind of stocking them up and using them when you need them, and less just kind of flying around whimsically for no good reason. Resurrect. Cooldown has been decreased, the cast time has been decreased, but it now revives an ally only at 50% health instead of 100% health. Now, something I didn't write, but I have considered and just didn't get around to writing it, is that rezzing somebody at 50% health is free ult charge for you. But at the same time, I'm not sure. Maybe they still get all the ult charge. Maybe I just increase the ult charge Valkyrie needs. Her healing over time, or her healing per second, was decreased anyway. So I don't feel too bad about her just getting a free, I don't know, 125 healing. That doesn't mean too much. Maximum range decreased, so it's riskier for her to res, even though she does it faster. And move speed penalty decreased, so there's more skill in being able to move while rezzing. You can jiggle, if you will. The resurrected player has a less time of being invulnerable. Basically, they still have time to move. They have 0.25 seconds to move when they can't take damage. This means, paired with the lower range, means you kind of only want to res players who either aren't being looked at, or who are behind cover. Valkyrie. Valkyrie recharges both charges of Guardian Angel upon casting, and the damage amplification resource meter recharge rate is increased by 200%, meaning it goes 3 times faster. So you can damage boost a lot more in Valkyrie. Still not 100% uptime, but you can damage boost more. Instead of it taking the 8 seconds to charge, it'll take whatever a third of that is. 2.6 seconds is what I'm gonna say. That's Mercy. Moira also gets a rework. So Biotic Grasp healing per second is decreased. The damage is decreased. The target acquisition radius is decreased, but the damage orb, the duration is decreased to 7 seconds to 5 seconds, but the projectile speed is faster for both types. The healing specifically, you can heal up to a maximum of 250 with 55 per second. The projectile speed while tethered is a little slower. For damage, this is where it gets interesting. It can impact players sticking to them until the orb is depleted. The orb does increase damage per second while attached. Sticking the orb to an enemy will cause the remaining damage from the orb to target that player. Impact damage is 30. The impact projectile radius is 0.3, so it's in line with things like Farah's rocket, Junkrat's mine, Soldier's rocket, those sorts of things. Deals 70 damage per second while attached, up to a total maximum of 140 total. The damage over time of this ability, when it's not stuck but instead it's tethered, is decreased from 50 per second to 35 per second. So this is basically double damage of this, up to the same maximum. Max range is increased because it moves a little faster. Tether range is a little quicker, and its projectile speed while tethered is significantly faster, meaning you're more incentivized to shoot it at people and hit them with it. Fade's cooldown has been increased. Coalescence damage per second decreased. Healing per second is increased. The self-healing is decreased. The movement speed is decreased, and the projectile radius is decreased. So you can heal your teammates better. Everything else is a little bit worse, and you are more vulnerable with that healing decrease and movement speed. So this should increase Moira's skill ceiling, but her value ceiling is only mildly higher. Zenyatta, on to the last hero. So for Zen, he has more shields. He kind of needs them, but his snap kick damage is significantly less. He no longer has additional knockback to the kick. The damage of the Orb of Destruction is a little bit decreased back to what it was a couple of patches ago, because that makes sense. The Orb of Destruction secondary fire is in line with that too. Orb of Discord maximum duration decreased from infinite to 6 seconds. Basically what this means is you can Discord someone and Discord will stay on them for 6 seconds, and then it will be off of them specifically for another 6 seconds, because there's a 6-second cooldown per person. So you can either swap this between 2 targets, or you can swap this between multiple targets, but you cannot keep it on one target for longer than 6 seconds. That should make the tanking experience a little bit better into Discord, but doesn't decrease its maximum value of being able to have a full 100% uptime if you manage it properly. Okay. Oh, that was 64 pages of patch notes. That's it. I'm done. I have so much editing to do, but then I'll be done finally with this project. Anyway, what would be really cool is if this video caught the eye of some actual real content creators who know what they're doing, and I got more opinions on this thing. For anybody who wants to check it out, maybe react to it on their own channels, you have my full go ahead and permission. The link is in the description, and please do. Anyway, that's it. I'm done. I've spent so long reading, writing, and thinking. It's time for a nap. Okay, bye.